These are in listen-only mode.
if you can hear us. All right, it looks like we are up and running finally. All right, so we had to switch computers around a little bit to get some audio, so apologize for that. Yep. And we'll go ahead and start again.
Okay, good morning. Just kind of threw us for a loop there. Good morning. My name is Stan Henning. I'm the business development manager here at CAD-1, and much more importantly, we have Brian and Jay Haley, PE, our Civil 3D and InfraWorks specialist, instructor, and engineer. And today we are doing a really special webinar on the round trip between the two programs. We really love this stuff, and we're happy to be able to present this to you. Sorry for the sound delay there. Our mic pooped out on us, and we couldn't get things up and running. So anyway, with that, we have a few housekeeping things, kind of catch our breath and get back on track. Most of you have been on a webinar here before. You know the drill. Hit the orange and white arrow to move the console out of the way so you can see the whole screen. You hit the raise your hand buttons to let us know you can hear us. Hopefully everyone can now. It looks like our mic is working. Thank you, Jennifer. And most importantly, if you do want to ask questions, please type them into the question box, and we will answer them as close to in context as possible. And hopefully the sound levels are pretty good. Sometimes we get a little loud, I've noticed. So with that, I want to go over some of the classes that are upcoming here. CAD-1 is the #1 training center in North America, for 2 years running, according to Autodesk and the independent surveys they do on customers who take their classes. We're very proud of that. We have a CAD GIS class coming up next week, and we have an InfraWorks 360 Fundamentals class coming up the end of next week as well. That's always a fun class. Civil 3D styles, pipe networks, hydrology and hydraulics, and grading coming up the week of the 22nd. Another Civil 3D Fundamentals class coming up the 13th through the 16th of July, and Survey Field to finish coming up the 27th and 28th of July. We have a few Autodesk promotions going on right now. Autodesk is making a lot of changes in the way they deliver software and the way they do things. As of the first of next year, you will no longer be able to buy individual seats of the box software. So they have some rebates and things like that running right now, which are really pretty good deals to get you either moved over to a network version or allow you to get more seats of the software or whatever you may need by the end of January next year. Please call us and talk about those. Rushing through those because I want to get on Brian's session here. And so with that, Mr. Haley, looks like you got the first slide up.
Thank you, Stan. Welcome back, everybody. It looks like we might actually get this thing done this month. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Spirits were conspiring against us, haven't they been?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, we ended up having to move the mic over from that computer over there to this computer over here and all sorts of fun stuff. So welcome, everybody. I'm glad we were finally able to do this. So today we're talking about being able to take data back and forth between Civil 3D and InfraWorks. If you haven't played around with InfraWorks, I absolutely love InfraWorks. I think it's a fantastic tool. So, but before we get started going too far, I've got a couple of polls that I'd like to do first. First of all, are you using InfraWorks? All right, now this really isn't I don't really want to distinguish between InfraWorks 360 and InfraWorks 360 LT, but so are you using InfraWorks in any way, shape, or form? All right, looks like most people have voted. Let's go ahead and close that. And then let's see. I know everybody's anxious to see what the actual results here are. So it looks like most people are not using InfraWorks yet. So that's pretty cool. So you're here checking this stuff out and wanting to see this stuff. So what about Civil 3D? Are you using Civil 3D? And if you so, what version of Civil 3D are you using? This is always a fun one to see, you know, when the new versions come out and see how long it takes for people to start adopting them.
So it looks like the numbers are. It's always funny how the numbers shift around.
Yeah. It's like people are changing their mind or something.
Yeah. So it looks like a lot of people are in 2014. I know a lot of people felt like that was a very good release. Maybe you have projects that are still on that version. Quite a few on 2015. Fewer early adopters.
Yeah. So if you want to be using the functionality that I'm showing you this today, you need to be on 2016. So that's kind of an important piece there. I do like seeing that everybody here is using Civil 3D. So that's good to see. All right. Is there anything else? How about in the final, probably most important question is, have we had enough work?
I'm going to vote on that one. Yes. Of course, it looks like several of the names are outside the Denver area.
Yeah.
You have to understand that Denver, on average, gets somewhere between 12 and 20 inches of rain a year. We've probably had that in the last 4 hours. Actually, not quite that.
Yeah, not quite that.
It has been a very, very rainy time for us.
Yes, it has.
Good chance to test out the hydrology software. All right.
Yeah, so it looks like, yeah, like you said, there's quite a few people outside of it. So, well, that's always fun to do. I always like to try to throw something more interesting. So today we're talking about InfraWorks and 360 and Civil 3D and some stuff like that. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about the different versions of InfraWorks, because there are now 2 versions of InfraWorks. I'm sorry, there's now 2 versions of InfraWorks 360. If you have the design suite and you're on the 2016 infrastructure design suite, either the premium or the ultimate, you have InfraWorks 360 LT. InfraWorks 360 is an additional program that you can then purchase. And if anybody has questions about costs and things like that, I'm sure Stan would be able to help us out with that.
Now, and to be completely clear, as Brian said just a few minutes ago, you do need to be on 2016 version to get these. If you were on 2014 or 15, you had the in-box version of InfraWorks.
Mm-hmm.
That won't work with these particular workflows we're going to show you, but it's been kind of confusing, the naming of this stuff.
So what I want to talk about here real quick is some of the differences between InfraWorks 360 and InfraWorks 360 LT. Now, what I'm going to be showing you here today is this import-export the Civil 3D thing. And as you can see, InfraWorks 360 or InfraWorks 360 LT, you can do this with. So what I'm going to show you today, for the most part, it can be done with the InfraWorks 360 LT. What can't you do with the LT version? Well, we have all of these additional design tools. If you want to use these tools, you have to purchase them, and they have to be run on top of InfraWorks 360.
Full version.
The full version, right. Another thing is this automatic model creation. That is the model builder tools. And if you want to share your model with other folks, you have to have the InfraWorks 360 for that as well. But we're focusing down here at the very bottom, that last piece, the import-export Civil 3D, and you should be able to do that with no problem in the LT version. All right, so let's see. Where do we want to go from here? So what can we do? Well, we've got this two-way workflow. We can go from InfraWorks to Civil 3D. So I can take my InfraWorks model. Maybe I'm doing some preliminary layout in InfraWorks, and I want to take that into Civil 3D. So I can open an InfraWorks model now in Civil 3D. Additionally, once I've done my final design, detailed design in Civil 3D, I can then take that Civil 3D data and push it into InfraWorks. So it is a two-way workflow here. So let's talk a little bit about going from InfraWorks to Civil 3D first. Now, just like everything else with Civil 3D, you want to make sure that your settings are set correctly prior to doing this. So there's a series of settings that allow you to control how things work as you're importing from InfraWorks into Civil 3D. So, we'll see those settings. All right. You then simply open the InfraWorks model in Civil 3D. There's a command right there on the ribbon in 2016 that allows you to open it. You'll get this little dialog box here, and basically you choose the model. you choose your coordinate system, and you choose what it is you want to bring in. You want to bring in the entire model or just a piece of it. So let's go ahead and see this, because I'm tired of showing you PowerPoint, so I actually want to get in and show you the software. All right, so here I am in InfraWorks. So here's my model. Let me go ahead and restore a bookmark here that shows you what it is we're going to be bringing in. And all I did here is I just kind of sketched up some stuff. It's not a very real design, so to speak. It's kind of hokey, you know, like why would you put a bridge there? You know, I wouldn't. There's no way I normally put a bridge there, but I wanted a bridge in my model so you could see what happens when it comes in. Another thing that I've done
there so the baseballs could go under the road instead of in the road. It's for safety.
Yeah, it's for the people going back and forth between here and the baseball field, so they don't actually have to cross the road. You know, whatever the case may be, right? I'm in sales. I do demos, and I don't do real world stuff anymore, right? I also have a drainage network here. So I just kind of flipped underneath the road here so we can see the pipes. I've got some buildings, I've got coverage areas, I've got a water area over here. So let's see what happens when we bring this in. Oh, the other thing I've got is I have design roads in here, and I also have the preliminary roads. So the bridges, the design roads, that's all InfraWorks 360. The rest of this stuff, and the drainage network, that's all 360. The rest of this stuff, you could be done with InfraWorks 360 LT. So if I want to take this model into Civil 3D, the first thing I have to do is close the model. So I can't have the model open and bring it into InfraWorks or into Civil 3D because InfraWorks locks the model. So I'll just shut out of InfraWorks here real quick, and we'll switch over to Civil 3D. So let me go ahead and start from scratch here. I'm just going to start a brand new blank drawing using the default Civil 3D template. There's nothing special about this template in any way, shape, or form. And I simply want to go in and import that model. Now, before I import the model, I want to double check my settings. So on the Insert tab, I have the set of tools for the InfraWorks 360 stuff. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to configure my settings. So under my settings, it brings up this little dialog box. And basically it says, okay, what data do you want to import? So over here on the far left, right, I can choose what it is I want to import. And just simply toggle those on and off. Right? Once I figured out what it is I want to import, over here on the left, right, I set it up. So for example, if I'm importing a terrain surface, I click on here and it tells me what type of terrain it is, or the settings in Civil 3D. So if I click on this icon, it says, okay, what style do you want to use and what layer do you want to use? Planning utilities. Now, I don't have any planning utilities in my model, so it doesn't really matter, but I can come over here and I can set this up as well. You know, design roads, intersections, drainage networks. So I didn't mean to interrupt that. Drainage networks. So I can come over here and I can set up my drainage networks to do this. Now, the nice thing about this process is if you're not familiar with the Project Chameleon, this is a pipe network catalog type of thing that the parts are compatible in both InfraWorks and Civil 3D. So the way my parts are in InfraWorks will be exactly the same way that they are in Civil 3D.
Ryan, is Chameleon found in the Autodesk labs? Or?
It is still a labs tool, so if you want to go play around with it, as far as I know, it might have graduated recently, but last I heard it's in the labs. All right, so I did want to talk about something here real quick. So after you're done setting these up, so let's say, for example, my terrain surfaces, you know, I don't want these to be the 2-foot and 10-foot background. I want this to be the 1-foot and 5-foot design. I hit OK and OK. Do you want to save the configurations? Well, yeah. And so what this does is, well, you know how just about everything in Civil 3D is stored inside of the drawing? This is an exception to the rule. So this is actually saved as a little XML file. So if you make any changes to this, you need to save the XML file, right? And so I just canceled that. There is no, you know, if I were to make a change, you know, I can open up one. So for example, the planning objects comes in specific ways. You notice the design stuff is turned off. If I open up the design objects, the planning stuff is turned off. Right? If I come in here and I want to do a save as, and I'll save this as Brian's import objects, and I say, you know what, I want the terrain surface and the planning utilities turned on, and I go ahead and save this, and I hit OK. Oh wait, I wanted to make a change to that. I go back into my settings. You notice everything's still back on. So this is not saved in the drawing. If I want to go change it, I have to go open my Brian's objects and then make the changes now. So it's a little different than the way most other things work in Civil 3D. Just to throw that out there. So once I've set up my configuration, I then simply open up the InfraWorks model. All right, so I browse to the InfraWorks model. So here's my model. It picks up on the coordinate system of the model. So it picks up on the database coordinate system. Honestly, I've never seen any reason to change the database coordinate system for my model. And it also picks up on the user coordinate system of the model. So this one is still the same as the database coordinate system. If I had changed it, it would have been there. But very importantly is your drawing has to have a coordinate system. If you notice, the open model is grayed out. I cannot open a model unless my drawing has a coordinate system. So I'll go ahead and select a coordinate system. I got two options. I can set it to the same as the user coordinate system of the InfraWorks model, or I can select a coordinate system for the drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and select one. I know my code, so I'm just going to type it in. So CO83-CF. So NAT 83, Colorado State Plains, Central Zone, U.S. foot. And now you'll notice the open model is an option. But before I do that, I want to make sure I get just what I want. So I'm going to tell it, hey, I just want to look at this area. I don't want to bring in that entire InfraWorks model because that's way too much information for Civil 3D. So I'll select my area. It's going to open up the Bing maps. So I'll say, yes, I want to display the Bing maps. This white rectangle we see here, that's the limits of my InfraWorks model.
Brian, real quick, and this is a question I have rather than a deep question. But a lot of people ask, why does it use Bing Maps? Can I still use Google Earth Maps and so forth? Do you know kind of what the little bit of the story around that is?
So the official word from Autodesk is that Google Earth import tools from several years back, Google changed something, their API requirements or something like that, and it's kind of a vague thing. Here's my thoughts on what happened. In order to be able to use that Google Earth imagery, you had to have the permission to do it. And using just regular old Google Earth, you didn't have the permission to use it. And so Google went to Autodesk and smacked them on the head and said, hey, quit giving your users the ability to steal our data. And so they said, okay, yeah, we can't do that anymore. And then they went to Microsoft, and they were able to work with the Bing folks on some sort of an agreement that says, yes, we can use it. But that's why we need to log in before we can use the Bing imagery, is because that's how Autodesk monitors how much data is being used, and so people get paid appropriately.
Well, and it's just one of the first questions that always comes up in a class or whatever, so just letting you know.
Yeah. So now it's asking me, hey, which area do you want? So again, I can see this white rectangle. That's the limits of my project. My particular project is right here in this little piece of land. So I'm simply going to draw a rectangle around the area that I'm interested in. And it's going to go look at that area and figure out what pieces and parts are in there. And it takes a moment, not too terribly long though. And hopefully there it'll pop up. Yeah, there it goes. All right. All right, so those settings that we set earlier, I need to choose which XML file I want to use. So I could use the Brian's objects if I had set that up correctly. I didn't, so I'm not going to use it. I am going to use the all objects XML file. If you want, you can edit that file to do your settings here. The selection set. Do you want to bring all the types of objects in or just some of them? So when I click on the Refine Selection Set, it tells me exactly what's coming in here. For example, I'm not interested in this transportation surface or the proposed ground surface. I just want the existing ground contours. All right, the planning roads. So I want to bring all my planning roads in. The planning utilities. So you can see this model doesn't have any planning utilities. So I'll go ahead and collect, design roads, intersections, drainage networks, coverages, water areas, bridges. So those are all the different types of things we can bring in. So I'll select OK, and then I'll click on Open the Model, and it's going to go grab all of those objects, and it's going to create Civil 3D objects in my drawing for me.
Now, Brian, what I'm always amazed at, and those of you out there in the audience who understand that this is really pretty phenomenal that it's able to do this. It's able to grab this kind of data from one program, bring it into Civil 3D, and actually work with it.
Yep.
I don't think that catches most people how amazing it is, really.
Oh, yeah. Now, my imagery is still on, so after you run this command, the command leaves the imagery on. I personally would rather have it turn it off after it's done importing it, so I'm going to go ahead and turn my imagery back off. So now I can see my surface, I can see my roads, right? So this little oval up here, that was my water area, right? I had some coverage areas in here. I had a couple of buildings in here. If you notice, buildings do not come in. I had some design roads. The design roads came in, created the intersection. Right, here's my utilities. If I grab my pipe network and pull it off into an object viewer, you can see that these structures match what was in InfraWorks. So you can see there's manholes. They got the circular lid on them. And then up here I had an inlet. It's got the rectangular lid on it. Right, these are just sample parts. They don't have to look this way, but these ones happen to look this way.
Ryan, is there a way to bring buildings in, or is it just not there yet?
It's not there yet. I don't know if they're planning on adding that functionality or not. If you're really interested in InfraWorks, you can be a part of the rolling sandbox. Every month or so, they bring out a new version of the sandbox that they let people use. So if you're interested in that, you can shoot me an email, and I can get you some information on how to join that program. It's basically like a year-long beta for, it's a consistent, continuous beta program.
Right.
All right. So here's my bridge. So I can take this bridge into a 3D viewer, and you can see the bridge that was brought into Civil 3D from InfraWorks as well. So some pretty cool stuff here. So that's going from InfraWorks into Civil 3D. Pretty straightforward, nothing ooh-ah. Another thing I did want to point out is it did bring in all these alignments, those planning roads as alignments. So these are all alignments, but they're nasty. As you can see, I got all these vertices and stuff. And they're planning roads. But my design roads did come in with alignment geometry, PCs, curves, those types of things. And they also had profiles. So this is alignment number 4. If I go find alignment number 4, you can see alignment number 4 has a profile and an existing ground profile. Oh, by the way, this existing ground profile is a setting for under your so under the design roads, one of the options I have is to create a surface profile. So that's why that surface profile is created.
Now the bridge is comes in from InfraWorks, as Brian said, and it's got some engineering data. It's not a fully engineered bridge by any stretch. That's why you're bringing it into Civil 3D. So when you saw that model, it's something of an approximation, but it's also got a little bit of engineering background to it.
Mm-hmm. All right. So does anybody have any questions on the process of going from InfraWorks into Civil 3D?
Getting any questions? So
right.
Everybody's either.
And one other thing I did want to point out here real quick. When you go to open the InfraWorks model, you don't have to choose the actual model itself. If somebody has sent you an IMX file, you can do the same process from that IMX file as well. So I just wanted to throw that out real quick. All right, so now I've got my drawing here. I've done my design. Let me go ahead and close this drawing. And we'll go ahead and open up this drawing here. So this drawing has my design in it. All right, so I don't have a bridge in here. All right, but here is my new design road. So it's simply a corridor. I've got a couple of intersections here, and created a surface from the corridor. So if I grab my little corridor surface here, pull this off into an object viewer. Let's see, let's change that to shades of gray. You can see I've got a nice little corridor surface going on here. I've also done a little bit of grading down here, so I decided, you know what, we decided to put in a track down here. So I've created this track, did some grading around it. Please no comments on my design. I did this design in like 5 minutes. So it's at least something, right? But I just want you to see the process when I'm bringing this in. So I've got this here in Civil 3D. I'm now going to go back over to my InfraWorks model, and I want to import this stuff into InfraWorks. Oh, I forgot my PowerPoint. I have all this written up here. Okay, so now we're going to go from Civil 3D to InfraWorks. So when you're bringing the Civil 3D data into InfraWorks, you're bringing the drawing in as the data source, just like you do with a shape file or a DEM file or something like that. It's going to be a data source. And so there is this new Civil 3D drawing data source now. Once you've brought it in and attached to it, just like everything else, you need to configure the data. Right? And when you configure it, you also get the option to choose the pieces of data from the Civil 3D drawing that you want to bring into InfraWorks. Do you want to bring everything in or not? So, you can toggle on and off what it is that you want to bring in from your Civil 3D drawing. Obviously, things change. So what happens when your model changes in Civil 3D? How do you get those updates into InfraWorks? Well, it's simple a matter of re-importing the data. So I can just right-click on the data that I want to bring, want to update from the model, from my drawing, and just re-import it. All right. And then finally, what about AutoCAD line work? Well, what if I just have a parking lot with striping and things like this? So here's my parking lot. How do I get this sort of data into InfraWorks to create something like this? So I'm going to do basically the same thing, only I'm going to use that track for this. So what do we do here? So these are the things that I'm going to show you here today. So let's go ahead and see this.
Brian, before we go over there, we have a question comment from one of our listeners here, and it says, I do not understand why we need two products to do the work and go forward and backward and not one extended product. Would you like to address that? I have a few thoughts as well. But I mean, basically, Autodesk created InfraWorks in the beginning as a planning and visualization tool with the idea that, over time, Civil 3D, the engineering tool, and the planning and visualization would be useful back and forth. Now, I won't comment because we don't know where Autodesk is taking this, but there's a very real possibility that, at some point maybe these will blend together or be much more contiguous or whatever. It's just that they started out as two products. They both have a great deal of use in the industry, and now you're seeing a lot of that use put together. Granted, it is a little bit confusing why you need to have two products to do this, but I think there's some logic to it down the road in another 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. Hey, and you can also think about it, like, well, how come I have Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Word?
Yeah.
Well, why don't they make just one big program that does both of them? Well, it's because the people that are doing word processing don't care so much about the Excel stuff. Eventually, is it all going to be one big program? I don't know. But that means I have to install it all on my system and manage it all, and it becomes overly complex, and I don't know. Would I like to see these two things combined together into one type of software? Yes. Are we there yet? No.
That's the best answer we can give you.
All right. So let me go through this. Let me go back over here to my site. So here's my site. I'm going to go ahead and change my proposal. I'm going to get rid of this preliminary stuff. Oh, by the way, when you bring your stuff into Civil 3D, it's going to take the data from the active proposal. So I'm going to go to my starting point proposal here. So this is where I'm going to be bringing this data in. So let me go ahead and bring the data in. So this, again, is just the InfraWorks 360 LT. So I'm just using the orange one. I'm horrible with colors. Excuse me. All right, so I'm going to connect to the data just like I do with any other data source. Excuse me, let me try this again. And I'm going to connect to a Civil 3D drawing. So I choose that, and I come down here and I find, my model. So let's see, it's here, and this is the drawing that I have all my design in, so this working drawing. So I'll go ahead and open this up. Once it brings it up over there on the right-hand side, first of all, I got to choose the data. So, for example, what data do I want to bring in? Now, my drawing was created from an InfraWorks model originally. And so it has that existing ground surface in it. Well, I don't want to bring that existing ground surface back into InfraWorks. That would just kind of be silly. So I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that one. I've got some other options here. So there's my corridor itself, the track surface, the corridor surface, the roadways. Those are the design roads that I have in that drawing, right? I'll go ahead and select OK, and it populates my list over here with all that pieces of data from Civil 3D. Now, I always tendency to get kind of confused over here because the Civil 3D data is so scattered through this list. This is something I just learned recently. You can change how the data is grouped. So up here I can change it from the feature type to the source type. So I want to filter it by where it came from. And now it puts all my Civil 3D stuff together. Now you're going to want to come through and configure this stuff. For example, the roads. Right? So if I bring this in, it's going to bring all my roads in. It's going to look weird, and I'll show you what it's doing here. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and refresh my Civil 3D stuff. And there it is. So as you can see, here is my corridor model. And what it did is it have all these links from the corridor, it brought them in as coverage areas. So this is a coverage area. This lane is a coverage area. My sidewalk is or my curb is a coverage area. This daylight over here is a coverage area. So it brings them in as coverage areas. But if you notice, this road looks kind of weird. So what happened here is, well, I also brought this road in on top of this road. So that's where I need to come in here and configure the data. So I'm going to go ahead and configure the roads that are coming in from Civil 3D. Oops, I just did refresh, not a configure. Let's try this again. And under the Civil 3D drawing tab, this is showing me all of the roads that are being brought in. Well, West 113th and Navajo Circle are the roads that are already in my InfraWorks model. So I'm simply going to uncheck those, and I'm going to bring just in my new design roads, in this case, 4. And then when I refresh that, my road looks good because now I don't have another road laying on top of it. But what is this road? So if I zoom in here, this road is actually a skinny, skinny, skinny little road. And this is basically just where the striping is coming from. The nice thing about doing this little null road, I'm not using the road style in InfraWorks to display my road. I'm using the corridor from Civil 3D to display my road. But my corridor in Civil 3D doesn't have things like light posts or bollards or furniture along it, decorations. So what we can do here is if I go in my edit mode on my road, now this is a design road, so this is InfraWorks 360 here that I'm showing you. I can edit the style. So what kind of style do I want here? Right now, it's just kind of using this null style. I have a null road lights style, and this is kind of funky. It's not perfect, but you can see, so you can put stuff in here. And, maybe that's not the best design in the world. Right, but I'm using InfraWorks 360. So I can actually add a style zone that says, hey, I want to use this null road from here to there. So I don't have those in there now. I can adjust that. And there, that looks better.
Right. I think this is interesting because Again, right now what you're using this for is the link back and forth between the two. You're able to use the InfraWorks as a visualization tool, as a presentation tool, as a conceptualization and planning tool, but you're able to now bring in the actual corridor so that people can see this is what it's actually going to look like. You can change the styles very easily and so forth, take those back and forth, engineer them correctly and so forth. So I'm kind of elaborating on the gentleman earlier's question, but that's the use for it now. And that is a very valuable use in many sectors of the world where you have to show planning commissions, get city approval, get population approval, and so forth. So, don't discount it too much. The other thing that there was a comment about, I'm not asking to bring in Civil 3D and Revit together. I understand that, but at the same time, you can bring in live Revit models into InfraWorks too, so that if you want to place your Revit model in there and have it in approximation with the road as it's engineered and graded properly, well, you can do those things. At some point, this stuff's going to blend more and more, but right now, use it for the best advantages you can get.
I agree. All right, so here's my beautiful road, and as you can see, it's very, very black. All right, maybe I want to distinguish the black to distinguish, hey, this is new construction, where the gray is, existing stuff. But, in this case, what I'd really like is to, see what it's going to look like eventually, where everything's kind of the same. So what makes this particular coverage black and not gray? Well, that's your style rules. So here I have my style rules, and under my coverage style rules, you can see you get all these rules in here. So these rules basically match this piece of my corridor. It takes this name from my corridor, assigns it as a tag to that coverage area property. And so if a coverage has the tag of pave, then assign this material here. And in this case, you can see it's black. So that's why this is black. Well, I don't want this to be black. I want this to be more of a gray color. So I'm going to remove the black from my rule, and I'll add in the gray. So I'm going to go to my materials, my roadways. I'll find a gray. Where's a good one? Where's that? Is this a good one? I don't want a linear pattern. There's this surface black. We'll do this surface dark gray. All right, so I'm going to do that one. I'll go ahead and hit OK. I'm going to commit the changes to my rules, so I just click on the little commit button down there, and then I'm going to rerun the rules, and now you'll see that the is gray. Okay, so maybe that wasn't the best style to use because it's got this little pattern in it, but that's the idea. Yeah, if I don't like that, I can always go change it again. Oops, I'm going to be the wrong one. Yep, pave this one. So I can go remove that. Let's try to add a better one in. Material, roadway. Yeah, let's try this one. I think this one will work better, hopefully. Commit, run the rules. Yeah, that one looks better. So there we go.
Brian, we have that student sidewalk for the meeting, hard on pedestrians.
Right. And so what's going on here is this was the original the layout road that was run in my model. And it's actually running on top of the coverage areas. Right?
That's why it's doing it.
Right, and it's pretty straightforward to fix. What I can do is I can just, right-click here and split the feature. And, it splits it in two. Grab this one over here, right-click here, split the feature again. So now I've got 3 sections, and then I can just delete that little piece there in the middle. And, hopefully if things line up a little bit better, then it all works out. And then I can do the same thing down here as well.
Obviously, there's still a few little things.
Yeah, yeah. Because I'm doing coverage areas and not roads. All right, so let's see. Let's do the traffic map here. right? So this you can see this flat area running through here. I want to bring in now my track. So here's the process. So back in Civil 3D, what I've got is I've got polylines. They're just polylines. There's nothing special here. I've got a polyline that I created out here that represents the limits of my grading. I've got a polyline in here that represents the outside edge of my track. I've got one that represents the inside edge of my track. And then I've got a polyline that represents the striping on my track. A bunch of polylines. Now, I learned this getting ready for this. If you want this polyline to be a line in InfraWorks, it cannot be a closed polyline. And I'll explain why here in just a bit. That's an open polyline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these polylines as an SDF file. And the way we do that is through map. So there's a command up there in map, so you can change your map, your workspace to the planning and analysis workspace, and it's up there somewhere. I can never remember where it is, but I do know the command to type. It's a map DWG to SDF. So I'm going to take my drawing and export it out as an SDF. Now I've already done this, so I'm just going to demonstrate with that outside line one. So I do this, right? It's going to ask, what do you want to name it? So you can see I've already done this several times. So I'm just going to call this one jump, because I don't want to use it. What objects do you want to select? So I'll go ahead and select it. And I'll grab that polyline that represents that outside edge. Right. In this particular case, I discovered this earlier. Coordinate system, if you want, you can put it into a different coordinate system. I really don't see any reason to do that here because it's just going to go whatever coordinate system to whatever coordinate system, right? Select OK, and it creates that SDF file. So what I did is I created an SDF file for this outside edge, for the outside of my track, for the inside of my track. This one is closed. And then I did it one that contained all of my striping, including all this stuff down here. Right. So now, back in InfraWorks, I will now want to include all of that stuff. So I'm just simply going to use Windows Explorer here, and I'm going to drag this in. And the one thing that will help you out is work from the outside in. So I'm going to go to the outside. I simply drag it. So I'm going to configure this as a coverage area. Right, I'm going to assign this coverage area style. So I'm going to use this grass with, gravel border. Close and refresh that, and now I have the limits of my grading here. And now it's a little bit easier to see the actual grading itself on this case. All right. And again, I just kind of start working my way in. So I have another one here that is the outer track edge. So again, I just simply drag this in. I'm going to make this a coverage area. And again, I'm going to assign a style. Now in this case, I'm not going to assign a coverage style. I simply want to assign a material to it in this case. So I'm going to choose the roadway, and which one do I choose? It's hard trail or something like that. So try and make it look like that. And now I'm going to bring on the inside one. So I'll do the inner track. I want this one to be grass, so again I do coverage area. I'm going to make this grass. So I don't want to use that because I don't want the gravel border. I'm simply going to assign a land cover material of a manicured grass because that's where they're going to do all the field events. My coverage area can't have a hole, so I have to drape these on top of each other. And then finally, I'm going to go ahead and bring in my striping. Now this is the cool one here. So when I do my striping, I'll go ahead and drag this in. Again, I'm going to do this as a coverage area. I know that sounds odd because it's lines, right? But InfraWorks can't have lines. ahead and just say, hey, I want these to be white. Come over here to my materials, assign a white color to these. But before I hit close and refresh here, I want to make sure that these lines have a thickness. So under the table, and this is the trick for bringing line work from CAD into InfraWorks, is you need to simply assign a buffer width to it. So I want these lines to be, I don't know, say 7 inches thick. Right? So that is going to be a buffer of 3.5 inches to each side. All right, we seem to be breaking in and out.
I don't know what to say. We're apparently having a little bit of trouble with our mics today, so.
And it might just be bad internet connection. There's not a whole lot we can do about that. We are recording this, so hopefully the recording will not be broken up. But
or you can listen to it break up all over again.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I'm going to assign. So I'm going to type in 3.5, but if you notice, it's feet. So that means, let's see, now 3.5 divided by 12, carry the pi, square root. Change your unit to inches. I'll close and refresh that. And now I have a track with line work in it. He says preemptively, while we're still waiting for it to load. He's confident enough that he knows this is going to work because he just did it this morning too. All right, there it is. There's my track. And then, if I had striping for the field on the inside, I have a process for that. Right, but you know what? Things. It's kind of hokey, but I at least want you to see what's going on here. So I'm going to come back over to Civil 3D, and I'm going to make the change here. So I'm going to simply grab this feature line that I used to do this original grading here. All right, and I'm simply going to raise it up in the air, I don't know, quite a bit. I'll go about 20 feet just to be obnoxious, right? So I'll use the raise lower command, and I'm going to raise this up in the air 20 feet. All right, so it's very, very obnoxious. We're grading into houses, right? Parking lot, nobody is going to like this track and field that's way up in the middle of the air. Now, before I can do any changes in InfraWorks, I have to make sure to save the drawing. So I'll go ahead and save the drawing. And re-import the data. This is where this source type configuration is in place. Let me find what I found here. All right, see if I can. All right, so I don't want to re-import it all. I just want to do the track grading group surface. I'll right-click on that, and I will re-import that piece of data, and we'll see the change here in the drawing. Now, my limits of grading isn't going to change because that's just a coverage area, but we should be able to see the grading change. So now I've got this nice hill where my track is.
And I apologize, I hope I don't mess up your name too badly. Harold Poultry chose comments on I'll read to that's the first thing we have some usage of it, cost of it, and so forth. It may not be acceptable, but this is what you have to work with now, and if it can be of use to you, well, wonderful. It sounds like you are using it for some good things. But, at least you have these tools to do much more accurate presentations, much more accurate studies back and forth, and we'll see what the future holds with it.
Yeah. I think it's pretty exciting technology personally.
Yeah.
And that pretty much wraps up what we've got for this presentation. So,
do polylines need elevations, John asks?
Oh, that's a good question, John. So John asked, so back here in Civil 3D, do these polylines need to have elevation? this is a surface, and these are just 2D polylines. Are in fact at 0. So the polylines do not need elevations. When you bring in a coverage into Civil 3D as a data source, it by default drapes on the terrain. So this is just draping on the terrain, and I don't have to worry about elevations for this. So that's a good question, John. All right, do we have any other questions before we call it a day?
All right, we have a couple minutes left, and doesn't look like we're getting any. So, Brian, I really appreciate your time putting this together. I think it's a good presentation, and hopefully it's helpful to you. If you want to get in touch with us, like us on Facebook, Twitter us on Twitter. We're also on LinkedIn, and Brian Civil 3D Plus talks about all things Civil 3D. So that would be good. Send us the link for the recording. We will have the recording on YouTube, and it is also, once it's posted, probably 4 or 5 days from now, it's also on our CAD-1 archives webinar page. So it's that's where you find it. And let's see, we have a couple more questions that came in.
So as far as the recording of the webinar goes, so here's our home page. All right, so you can just go to the events, CAD-1 events here, webinars, and then the webinars archive. And we've got a couple webinars here.
Yeah, that will take you to our YouTube, or you can just go cloud services. Again, sorry to make big presumptions. If you're in the U.S., it's roughly anywhere from $1,500 to $3,500 to use the cloud service, depending on what you log into. If you're in Europe or the Mideast or Africa or other parts of the world, honestly, I don't have access to that pricing, and you need to check with a local dealer there. John asked, how can we get the recorded version? We just filled everybody in on that. So hopefully everybody can join in on that. And if you do have questions, feel free to type them and send them to info@cad1.com. I'll get them over to Brian, and we can give you more personalized attention. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys very much.
All right, bye-bye.